Welcome to a new video. This time you need to put on your spacesuit because we are going to have a look behind the scenes of Space Mountain at Disneyland Paris. We will go to the moon. We will go to the planets. We will go to the stars. Just as one goes today from Liverpool to New York, easily, quickly, surely, the oceans of space will soon be crossed like the oceans of the moon. These words could easily be claimed by an aerospace engineer, but they actually belong to Michel Ardan, one of the heroes of the novel by Jules Verne entitled From the Earth to the Moon. While the moon had not yet been reached in the story, the French adventurer already aspired to send travelers deeper into space. Very much in the same spirit, Space Mountain. Mission 2 was imagined as a sequel to Space Mountain. From the Earth to the Moon. To make this second mission a reality, the Columbiad had to be recalibrated so that trains could be launched from the bottom of the cannon. By increasing the distance associated with the launch sequence, the rocket-shaped trains could now fly beyond the moon to the very edge of our universe and encounter spectacular cosmic occurrences like comets and supernovas.
Walt Disney was fascinated by space and space travel, and of course he did, on television he did several programs related to space travel, and the first John Hench sketch of Space Mountain dates from around 1965. So even before landing on the moon, Walt Disney and the Imagineers of that era were thinking about taking space travel to a new dimension. They had the rocket to the moon attraction, but they envisioned something that was far more thrilling.
The takeoff acceleration will be gravity times 2.9.
24 brave men and women carry with them a dream.
You have a dream of a new spaceship.
But like often happens at Imagineering, there are some ideas that we have that are ahead of their time. And that was an idea that the dream was there to do a Space Mountain, launch and be in the darkness of space. The technology was not available at the time because, as you can imagine, you've got all of these vehicles moving around in the dark. That really required a level of sophistication of computer technology that wasn't ready yet.
Ces gens vont être projetés
by what can only be described as the enormous cannon.
Officially opened on April 9th, 2005, Space Mountain Mission 2 renewed Jules Verne's dream by introducing a brand new journey combining unique special effects with a thrilling futuristic soundtrack. Passengers board one of 5 trains. As in Jules Verne's story From the Earth to the Moon, they will act like ammunition into the breech of a 5-meter white cannon. A huge explosion fires the train up and into the blackness of space. The passengers will not see this track or the surrounding structure, as the ride's speed disorientated upside down and in the dark.
We're going for launch.
Check, data check. G538, logged on.
Good. 1, lift off.
Space Mountain, the greatest adventure in the universe. Only at Disneyland Paris.
I know many of the fans have seen some of the incredible designs from Tim Delaney and team for how Space Mountain was going to be incorporated into Discoveryland. If you look at the side of the Videopolis restaurant, you can see 2 round tubes. And in fact, in one earlier design, those tubes are going to go across and be connected to Space Mountain so that guests could travel back and forth between the two. And in fact, there are even bigger earlier ideas where the whole complex of Space Mountain, including the Nautilus and including a restaurant, that a lot of Discoveryland was going to be enclosed, was going to be under a roof, a canopy, as one gigantic area.
3 months before Space Mountain is due to open, the carriages for the rocket trains are shipped in from Holland, and the hardware for Space Mountain has been arriving from factories all over Europe. Most of it is going together well. The mountain, a vast steel volcano, is now a familiar silhouette to visitors, but it's far from complete. The software that will drive the ride is so complex that a technical team has been recruited from the aerospace industry.
Disneyland Paris has one of the most incredible, I think, space mountains in the world, in the universe, I would say. And it's been a beloved attraction since the day it opened. And I know that our fans have enjoyed seeing the iterations of storytelling that have changed over the years. But like all of our attractions, if you're a fan and you go dive deep into any attraction in our park, you'll see lots of ideas, as something evolves. We spend a lot of time and a lot of years designing our attractions. They get refined, they get changed over time, they get added to. That's part of the Imagineering process. It's the first idea is generally never the idea that you see in the park. Ideas are changeable, malleable, not just before we open, but obviously as you've seen over time.
On the evening of the 31st of May, 1995, the grand opening of Space Mountain was held at Disneyland Paris, with a star-studded lineup of invitees walking the red carpet up Main Street, USA to Discoveryland. The evening commences with the entry of Buffalo Bill, Annie Oakley, and Chief Sitting Bull, followed by a Jules Verne-style rocket pulled by horses in preparation for the launch from the Earth to the Moon. Roy E. Disney then welcomes guests to the evening and hands proceedings over to Jules Verne, who appears from the top of the rocket, and then fast forward to the future as a rocket man takes off and flies across the sky in front of Space Mountain. Mickey Mouse enters the stage, and Roy E. Disney dedicates the new attraction, inviting guests to enter ready for their launch to the moon. Mickey and Minnie, Chip and Dale were on hand to meet and greet guests in their space outfits. As darkness falls, 30 starmen appear, spilling fountains of fireworks across the entrance to Space Mountain before the entrance of the Queen of the Night, who sings the Magic Flute aria, summoning 120 cast members with spinning wheels of light and fireworks. As the music changes to the dramatic theme of Space Mountain, fireworks representing stars and planets explode in the sky above and from Space Mountain, bringing this dramatic opening to an end.
The original Imagineers came from the Walt Disney Studio, from the animation studio, as well as from live action studios in Hollywood. And so the original designers, in thinking of attractions for the park and thinking of design of the park, thought of it very much in cinematic terms. Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, and from a storytelling perspective. I mean, storytelling is the heart of what we do, and they took everything that they knew from making short films and feature films, live action and animation, and brought that to bear in this new three-dimensional format. We still, to this day, continue to use that legacy of thinking of storytelling in cinematic terms, a long shot, a medium shot, a close-up.
Every night, a team of technicians do a safety check of the attraction. The launch system is checked, and the ride vehicles are getting a review if everything works as intended. There is also a check on the tracks of the rides, as well as the brake system is getting tested. We check everything, also the wheels, and especially the entire system for blocking the harnesses.
Space Mountain Mission 1 was about our voyage from the Earth to the Moon, but this is about going beyond the Moon and further deeper into space, and about the experiences that we encounter along that journey. It's an adventure to the edge of the universe. This attraction has not been about modifications of the structure, but rather an enhancement of the experiences you'll get along your journey. The new story highlights the aspects of the ride system in that every twist and loop contained in the attraction is related to a cause and effect, and every effect is created by a special effect, which we do through high definition video projection, special effects, lighting effects, smoke effects, and music, of course. And all these senses come together to give us a very sensational new attraction experience.
The first steel tubular roller coaster was the Matterhorn at Disneyland in 1959. And it's incredible to think of the journey of steel coasters from that date onward. And, each attraction that we do is created in a time period and where there are different technologies available to us, different special effects techniques. And we want to take advantage of those as Imagineers in our storytelling. So even though we had done Space Mountain in Florida and Space Mountain in California in one style, the Imagineering team for Disneyland Paris wanted to take advantage of advancements that had taken place in roller coasters from that time and make a much more thrilling, as Luke had said, much more thrilling adventure in space. Combining that with the great Jules Verne's story of From the Earth to the Moon with the Baltimore Gun Club and the cannon and Jules, and all of the things that you saw inside that, the storyline of that book with state-of-the-art technology from coaster design at that time was a wonderful combination and really reinvented Space Mountain for the Disneyland Paris audience.
So, here we are in the catapult, the launching area. All the equipment that you see is safety equipment. There are 21 brakes and there are anti-return devices. The brakes are checked by our night teams. The train arrives here, it's going to position itself in an area and be stopped by the emergency brakes. Then the wing will slowly go up and hook itself underneath the wagon. At that moment, the brakes will open, the wing will then release the wagon, and the pusher will propel the train into the attraction. So, here is the pusher, the mechanism that propels the train into the attraction, the same catapult system as on aircraft carriers. It takes about 10 days to replace it. There are 5 technicians in the morning, evening, and at night. There are a little more than 200 steps. The view from here is so beautiful. You can see all the way to Frontierland. This is still not the highest point of the attraction. We can go even higher.
Imagineers were always looking to raise the bar on every attraction that we've created. And that, in part, was Walt Disney's original design, which was that the theme parks would never be completed as long as there's imagination left in the world. And of course, as time moves on, audiences get more sophisticated, technologies get more sophisticated, and we're always keeping our eye on those, inventing those. And where possible, we're adding those back into our attractions to keep them fresh, to keep them relevant, to keep them as popular as they are. So, of course, this attraction already opened with incredible technological advances, the catapult launch, the onboard audio. But many of the special effects that were created initially were based on technologies from time before that, or just at that time. And of course, since then, what guests have seen in the movies and what we've been able to create with new digital technologies really enabled us to go back into this attraction each time we added a new story, a new show, and look to what magic do we have at our fingertips that will make this attraction more immersive, more fun, more of a wow for our guests. It's just what we do as Imagineers, is to always try and keep making whatever we've created better and better and keep it relevant and fun for our guests.
Similarly, we absolutely drew on some of the technologies that had been applied in other places, Ghost Galaxy, some other iterations of Space Mountain, and relied heavily on finding those little places in what is a very large, dark box to be able to project some media in some key moments, to be able to have those kind of moments of fire or explosion. We also used LED strips in order to create some extra moments of action in sort of the fire of laser blasts. But generally finding ways to rethink or break the way things were supposed to be used in the past. So a lot of the fun of going back into Space Mountain was finding things that maybe had not been projected on before or didn't have media in the same ways, and kind of finding new inventive ways to use those things to create new, different moments of story as you go through the attraction. So for Hyperspace Mountain, it was really interesting thinking through how to create a new story in the attraction, because for one thing, the attraction sits within Discoveryland, which is so strongly a Jules Verne place, and you absolutely do not want to lose any of that character. And Star Wars has a very different aesthetic. It's a sort of different style of storytelling, and so getting a Star Wars story to be told married up with something that is in Discoveryland was a real challenge. And so for us, what we decided to do was find that moment where we had a front door, that Discoveryland was holding the attraction of the mountain inside, and then once you pass through, the interior of the attraction lends itself incredibly well to telling a Star Wars story. You're already in space, you're already plunging through darkness. It's already got that sort of exhilaration that you know and love from a Star Wars story. And so moving specifically from Discoveryland and then beginning a different Star Wars story once you are inside was one of the main things that we focused on. And then once you're inside, thinking about beat by beat as you go through the motion of the attraction, what that scene is in a Star Wars dogfight. And so making sure that you progress from sort of the beginning of things are heating up to in the heat of the action to ultimately, exploding all of the various different ships that you're running through before you escape back out to the entrance.
Space Mountain is as iconic for us as Imagineers as it is for guests. And what I love about Space Mountain is that it actually is an attraction that had a start with Walt Disney. There's something I didn't know when I was a guest at the parks when I was a kid, was that this was an idea that Walt Disney actually had, but wasn't able to achieve in his lifetime. And so we started in Florida, and of course Space Mountain has gone around the world. It has become, I think, so iconic, and in a sense, it's become a brand. And I think that's what's interesting about Space Mountain at Disneyland Paris, which, as many of you know, it was originally going to be Discovery Mountain. But we felt that Space Mountain was so iconic as a brand that late in the project's construction, we decided to change the name of it. And I know fans of Disneyland Paris will know that in the railings outside the attraction, you can actually see the letters DM hidden in the railings, which was from Discovery Mountain. That was something that was not changed prior to opening the attraction. But yes, Space Mountain has always been a beloved attraction. The idea of catapulting through space in the darkness with stars, it's exhilarating and it's fun. And, at its time, it was the only coaster, I think, that had been done in that fashion. And so, yes, it's continued to be a classic attraction with our guests. But we've also allowed ourselves to go back in and reimagine it. It is the classic Space Mountain in terms of the DNA of what Space Mountain is, being, blasting off into space and the darkness and having an immersive thrill adventure. But it also is a case study in that the Imagineers who created this attraction, Tim Delaney and his team, didn't just replicate the attraction that had come before. In other words, they reimagined what Space Mountain could become for a new generation. The catapult launch, the inversions, the onboard synchronized soundtrack and score were all things that were not part of the original Space Mountain concept. And yet as Imagineers, we're not locked in time. We have to continually build and improve on and reimagine our products as we move forward for our guests so that they will always be relevant and magical and fun and surprising for our guests.
There's no question but what Space Mountain is a touch point for anyone who visits the parks. And also if you think about design, right? If you hear, oh, I'm going to Disneyland Paris or I'm going to Walt Disney World, oh, are you going to ride Space Mountain? Feels like it's typically one of the first questions that you get. And that's, decades after the initial attraction was built, which is really amazing. And I think that that's because Space Mountain does two things. We've talked about that sense of achievement and bravery that, oh, I was able to go on it and I was able to do it. But also the sense of imagination that it sparks of I'm among the stars, I'm in space, and the fact that you can have that moment with your family and that kind of memory that sticks with you, that it's exhilarating, it's exciting, and it kind of makes you think a little bit. And it's all in this one dark, crazy experience where you're, flipping around through the stars.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to stay updated with more content like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thanks for your support.